Hey, good evening, everyone. I hope you had a nice holiday. We're at episode 64 here of Sword of Spirit Sermonator. Last week was pretty intensive stuff on the revelation knowledge coming forth from Daniel. And it's important that we finish up. I want to go through chapters 10, 11, and 12 because you're going to see a lot of how God works with people with visions and some of the things that he spoke of, not only the Antiochus Epiphanes thing, but the future way downstream, which is where we are now. And, people will say, gee, I never heard that before. Well, it's in Daniel, the book of Daniel itself. It says that in the end times, in the latter days, that knowledge will be increased. And so it is. So let's go back and let's conclude. And then when we're through, if we finish, if we have time, we're going to go right into our next little chat, which supports pretty much what we studied in Daniel, believe it or not. So let's look at Daniel chapter 10. Now, we went and skipped around and went through 10, 11, 12, a couple of spots in last week's lesson. But let's finish the journey, and you'll see why when we do get to that point. So in Daniel chapter 10 speaks of the time of the vision that Daniel had. It was the third year of Cyrus, the king of Persia. And it says a thing was revealed unto Daniel, whose name was called Belteshazzar. We know that from earlier in the study. And the thing was true. Listen now, but the time appointed was long, which means it was way out there. Now, in Daniel, we was not written that far behind what happened in the Maccabean revolt after Antiochus Epiphanes in about the year 165. Daniel was in the 400s, so it's just not that long. Long here means way out, okay? And it says, and he understood the thing and had understanding of the vision. We're going to find out why and how. He says in verse 2, in those days I, Daniel, was mourning for 3 full weeks. Now, can you imagine being on your face in front of God for 3 full weeks? Prayer, supplication, okay? Hard to imagine. But he was a prophet. But he also held a high position in the kingdom. He had a regular job, all right? And it was a big one. He says that I ate no pleasant bread, neither did I drink wine or eat meat. Nothing entered my mouth. Neither did I anoint myself with oil, all right, at all, till 3 whole weeks were fulfilled. And those are weeks of days. Shavuot. And in the 4th and 20th day of the first month, as I was by the side of the great river, which is the Hiddiki, which is the Tigris, okay? Came to him a vision of a heavenly messenger. He says in verse 5, I lifted up mine eyes, and I looked and beheld a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Uphaz, all right, the island of gold. It says his body was like the beryl, and his face as the appearance of light or lightning. Now, where do we see a similar description? We see a similar description in Revelation 1 and Matthew 17, which I'll let you read on your own. It says, and his eyes were as lamps of fire, and his arms and his feet like in color of polished brass, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. And I, Daniel, I alone saw the vision, okay? For the men that were with me saw nothing. They didn't see this. But there was a great quaking that fell upon them, a fear, so that they fled and hid themselves because they knew something was going on, but they couldn't see it. Only was revealed to Daniel. In verse 8, he says, "Therefore I was left alone, and I saw this great vision, and there remained no strength in me." My comeliness, in other words, his face, was no strength. It was turned into corruption, and I retained no strength at all. He was just weak, white as a ghost, and scared, shook. Now this is a man of God, but listen on. "Yet heard I the voice of his words, and when I heard the voice of his words, then was I in a deep sleep." Oftentimes, we dream dreams and see visions in dreams. Now, people wonder about dreams. People ask me about dreams all the time, and they say, "I can't remember the dream." If you can't remember, it's not important. When a dream is important, you remember it. And there is typically a meaning, a very personal meaning, that oftentimes needs to be a little deciphered, but it's there. Okay? He was in a deep sleep on my face, and my face was toward the ground. He had his face down. And then he felt the touch of a heavenly messenger. Verse 10, "Behold, a hand touched me, and it set me upon my knees and upon the palms of my hands." So here he is on the ground, prone, like a puppy, knees down, hands down, head down. "And he said unto me, O Daniel, a man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak unto you, and stand up straight. For unto thee am I now sent." And when he had spoken his word unto me, I stood trembling. All right? Why? Because here comes the answer to his prayer. In verse 12, "Then he said to me, Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that thou didst set thine heart to understand and to chasten thyself before thy God, thy words were heard, and I am come for thy words." He was beloved. Okay? Listen to verse 12 and really absorb that. It's a lesson to us. We know how hard Daniel prayed, and we talked about supplication. He was on his face. He was not ashamed. He didn't care about any man, king's edict, this or that. We saw it, all right? Guys were pulled out of fires. Lions didn't touch him. When God's not his hand on you, nothing can remove that, okay? And he said to him, from that very first, when you finally set your heart, it starts here, to understand. And when you understand, we realize that everything that we see going on, that somehow we're a part of it. We have to chasten ourselves. I've done it, as recently as a week ago. And it's amazing because you wait and you pray over time, as Daniel did. Now, these are years have passed now. Daniel's an old guy at this point. All right? And he waited, and he continued to pray, and he continued to follow and do as he was instructed. The angel of the Lord, or the man that he saw, which we're going to talk about a little bit more, okay? He said, from that very beginning, the first day, you set your heart to understand. He asked the Lord, what is this? I need to know. All right? You chasten yourself. In other words, chastening yourself doesn't mean, mea culpa, and you beat yourself over the head. No. What it means is when you're so diligent in prayer, when you search our conscience, and we wonder, what is it that's still preventing? There may be a little thing left to pray about. In other words, God says he's going to do this, and you say, okay, well, when, what do I, instead of saying when, and keeping asking, remember we went through this over time. God hears you the first time. He's waiting for you to hear him. Okay? Not only to appropriate his promises and to discuss those and to bring them to bear in creation by testifying of them and articulate them, but also to find the little places left in our heart or our mind that don't particularly conform to prayers answered. What's left? So, oftentimes we'll say, oh, goodness, I didn't think of that. Lord, I'm thinking of it now, and I'm sorry for whatever I did. Remember, in everything that we experience, we are a participant, willing or otherwise. All right? Mostly willing. And until we recognize that, even in our most diligent prayers, all right, like let's say someone has wronged us terribly or broken our heart or something like that, and it's like, oh, woe is me, I'm so upset about this, and blah, 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 and you may rightfully be. However, we are all participants, and none of us is, it says no one is good, not one, only God. We have a part that we've played in those scenarios that we ask for deliverance from. We do. We're human. And that's how we are. So now, in verse 13 says, but the prince of the kingdom of Persia, he withstood me 21 days, 21 days. Okay, but lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. What does Michael or Michael mean? We've studied this. One who is like God. The chief archangel. One who is like God. One comes to wonder, because Michael was there in the beginning too. He was part of the word spoken, not for speculation, but for wonderment. Michael, who is the closest created being to God? Well, we know him as Yeshua, Jesus. And how often people have said, is Jesus Michael, the chief prince of God, who was created beforehand? And it's something to ponder. The man Yeshua, Jesus, the one who will return as the Lion of the tribe of Judah, soon I might add, is where our focus is. But this prince, the chief princes, he's called, in Daniel, visited him. He says, now I come to make you understand what shall befall thy people. Now when? In the latter days. Listen, verse 14, in the latter days, for yet the vision is for many days, many, distant, way into the distance. Nothing to do with the reality of Antiochus Epiphanes. All right? And in verse 15 it says, and when he had spoken such words to me, I set my face toward the ground and I became dumb. He was speechless. He could not answer. Dumb doesn't mean stupid. It means can't speak, can't articulate. Behold, one like the similitude of the sons of men touched my lips, and then I opened my mouth and spoke, and said unto him that stood before me, O my Lord, by the vision my sorrows are turned upon me, and I have retained no strength. For how can the servant of this my Lord talk with this my Lord? For as for me, straightway there remained no strength in me, neither is there breath left in me. We can also say that when we are weak, he makes us strong. In our weakness, God is strong for us, okay? He raised him up off the ground, showed him what he had to see, scared the heck out of him, told him this is going to happen way in the future to your people, Daniel. just as we talked about the 70 weeks, are determined upon your people, Daniel. And now comes the strengthening from the message from heaven, from the messenger. In verse 18, then there came again and touched me one like the appearance of a man, and he strengthened me. Could have been the Messiah. How would he know? He never saw him before. And he said, O man, greatly beloved, fear not. Don't be afraid, Daniel. Peace be to you. Who is it that says peace be unto you throughout the New Testament? Is it not Yeshua, Jesus? Be strong. Be strong. And when he had spoken to me, I was strengthened. And I said, let my Lord speak, for thou hast strengthened me. He was able to hear now. He was able to absorb. The fear had gone from him. The overwhelming feeling that shook him and dumbfounded him. The mercy and kindness of the Lord himself strengthened him, allowed him to speak. He said to me, knowest thou, for I come to you. Do you understand why I'm here? He's saying, Daniel. Now I'm going to return to fight with the Prince of Persia. You see, there was a warfare going on. It wasn't physical. He's fighting with the Prince of Persia, okay? Persia today is Iran and Iraq, you know that, right? But extended to the entire Middle East back in those days. And the war was on. This is a spiritual war as well. The angel of the Lord, the Prince of the Lord, told him, I'm going to fight with the Prince of Persia. When I'm gone forth to that prince, then the Prince of Greece is going to come. Remember, now, who did we say does these things? Only God makes covenants, remember, like we said last week. But also, who does he makes kings. He sets them in and he sets them down. And right now, he's saying, under the authority of God, whoever this is, read it, let the Spirit of the Lord speak to you. All right? He said, I'm taking this guy down. And somebody's going to take his place. All right? King of Greece. Philip of Macedonia. And then Alexander the Great, his son. He's going to come next. Just like we had read earlier on, the kingdoms. In verse 21, he says, but I'll show you that which is noted in the scripture of truth. The scripture of truth. And there is none that holds with me these things but Michael, your prince. Now, God is speaking directly to him now. This is the Lord. He says, there's nobody that can contend with me, okay? That's what he just said. Nobody can holdeth with me. They can't hang. There's no fight in them. They can't. They're nothing. And the only one that can stand and hold with me in truth is Mikael, one who is like God, your prince. I'll let you think through those things and ponder that information for a time. Okay, so now we're back in the physical in verse 11. I hope you see the richness of Scripture, what it's done here, okay? What the Lord shared with us as well as Daniel. We are fortunate. We just may not realize it. These are things that people read. And the Lord said to this, and then I lifted up my hand. You know, you really got to take this stuff apart. Line upon line, word upon word, precept upon precept. That's how Scripture is built. That's why it's contemporaneous. It's unified. It's all one word. Chapter 11, verse 1. And I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, okay, even I stood to confirm and strengthen him. He stood up for him. Okay. New prince. I'll show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all. And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece. Constant battle in those days. Constant battle. And in verse 3, we go through and we see the rule of Greece, or Gracia. A mighty king shall stand up and rule with great dominion, and he'll do according to his own will. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken. In other words, when he gets a little too full of himself. Remember, God sets them in and he takes them down. He allows kingdoms to begin and he breaks them down. All right? And shall be divided toward the 4 winds of heaven. And not to his posterity either, nor according to his dominion, which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others beside those. Right on the ash heap of history, just like every other kingdom. Now listen, in verse 6, and in the end of years they shall join themselves together, for the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement. But she shall not retain the power of his arm, and neither shall he stand, nor will his arm. But she shall be given up, and they that brought her, and he that begat her, and he that strengthened her in those times. Strong parallel to John, the 15th chapter, which we studied a couple weeks ago. But listen to this now, because here's where John 15 comes in. Verse 7, but out of a branch of her roots shall one stand up in his estate, which shall come with an army, and shall enter into the fortress of the king of the north, and shall deal against them, and shall prevail. Who is this? Who is this? Syria? Who? And also shall carry captives into Egypt, their gods, with the princes, with the precious vessels of silver and gold. And he shall continue more years than the king of the north. Okay? And then the king of the south shall come into his kingdom and return to his land. But his sons shall be stirred up and will assemble a multitude of great forces. And one shall certainly come and overflow and pass through. Then shall he return and be stirred up even to his own fortress. And he goes on to talk about the kings of the north and the kings of the south and the great multitudes, all right? How they lift up their hearts in pride and how they will get cast down. Many tens of thousands will be cast down, but he's not going to be strengthened by it. The king of the north shall return and shall set forth a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come after certain years with a great army and with much riches. I'm going someplace important with this, and we spoke about this already. In those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south. Also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fall. The king of the north shall come and cast up a mount and take the most fenced cities. The arms of the south shall not withstand, neither his chosen people, neither shall be any strength in them. He will stand in the glorious land. Now he's back into the reality of what happened with Antiochus. All right. Corrupting the daughters of women, corrupting the city, her, the daughter of women. Then he says, after this shall he turn his face to the isles, and shall take many. But a prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. What he's showing is that this Antiochus Epiphanes, okay, was a prideful, deceitful man who gained favor by subterfuge and sweet words. And he speaks of him in the physical, but he is a precursor for the man of sin to come. Okay? Who is the king of the south? Is it Israel? Or is it Iran? And the king of the north, Turkey? Because it certainly sounds like those are strong possibilities. He shall turn his face toward the fort of his own land, but he's going to stumble and fall. Then he's going to be a raiser of taxes, glory of his own kingdom, but in a few days, a short days, and I think he means few years, he's going to be destroyed. And in his estate shall stand up yet a vile person to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom. All right? Now, the funny part about Antiochus Epiphanes, Epiphanes means God is manifest, but he was really called Epimanes, which means a madman. That's what his enemies called him. We see a picture of who we believe the false prophet, the man of sin, will be, all in this. Listen, because it says, but he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. By flatteries, soft words. And then with a flood, they'll be overthrown right before him. And he'll be broken. Epiphanes was broken. The man of sin will be broken, regardless of his riches and his spoils. And then we duck down here to verse 27. It says, and both of these kings' hearts shall be to do mischief, and they shall speak lies at one table, but it shall not prosper, for yet the end shall be at the time appointed. So we see that he's now showing us in the physical manifestation of the madman who believes he was God, is a precursor, is a foreshadowing. It's a literary device as well as a prophetic device of what will happen. Remember what I said, one who bows down, okay, and a handsome one, winning by flatteries, okay, like a lightning bolt. The number of that man is 666. We won't say his name, but he's alive. He'll go back to his land with great riches, and his heart will be against the holy covenant. And he will do exploits. What does it say that this man of sin would do? He will speak marvelous things and even do miraculous things. Why? Because it's appointed to him. But it says in verse 29, at the time appointed he shall return and come toward the south, but it shall not be as the former or the latter. He will pollute the sanctuary. That's what Antiochus did. Well, there won't be a sanctuary this time, but there will be a polluting. And he will do wickedly against the people of the covenant, corrupting them by flatteries. But the people that know their God will be strong, 12,000 from each tribe, and a great multitude with them. And he'll do exploits, just like it says in Revelation. He'll speak great things and great blasphemies, but will also do wonders. And when they shall fall, they shall be helped with little help, a great falling away. 1 Thessalonians, remember. All right? But many shall cleave to them with flattery. Flatteries, even to the time of the end, because it is yet for a time appointed. All right, we're closing in on the end of part 1 here. So we're going to take a little break in a few seconds. Then we're going to talk about the next part, which is the prophecy of the willful king. And we're going to see how Daniel is taken through all of this time. Present, early future, distant future. Be back in a few.